Monday, June 16th. We're taping this about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the All 32 Potties. Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Giardi. Of course, we are a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Show brought to you by Prize Picks, North America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off when you play 5. Prize Picks, run your game. So today, Will and I are going to jump into a little bit of a mailbag. We got a few questions in there. We think there's more out there. We're going to solicit more as we go along and make that sort of a part of our equation going forward, especially here during the 5 weeks where, let's face it, it's a slow time for the NFL. But we're also going to get to winners and losers of the offseason. I view this as the big picture. This is from the end of the season through free agency, through the draft, trades, coaching changes. Obviously, now what we've seen in the spring with OTAs and with mandatory minicamp, who's in camp, who's not in camp, all those sorts of things will factor into where we go with our winners and losers. But first, Will want to start with
you don't want to
some
start in the
mailbag
Middle
questions.
East, maybe the messed up with the Mets.
I don't know. I think maybe not. I think maybe
wrong podcast. Wrong podcast.
Wrong podcast. I think let's stick to football. We got from X. The Monotone of Bill is the name of the account. Hi, which coach, in your opinion, will be the first to use a play designed by AI? And I know you were anxious for this one, so go ahead.
Yeah, I found this one interesting because backstory, me and Mike were just on a different call, and I was having trouble logging in, and it started just reading me the conversation in AI. And I'm pretty good with this stuff. Like, in a past life, like I recruited people who designed all the AI technology, and like it was a real mind f. So I found that was one particular topical. I'm going to say Mike McDaniel's the coach that this year at week 4 when they're like struggling and they have one good play or something, he's gonna be like, "You'll never believe this. I had our data science team and AI partner on a play, and we used it, and everyone will go crazy, and it'll be TikTok and how he's aura farming, and we'll get it'll be a social media darling." So I'll say Mike McDaniel's the one that just the
first place my brain went to was Mike McDaniel. It just strikes me as that guy. That's going to be the guy that does it. Right. Absolutely. No questions asked. So I think we're both in lockstep on that one. This one comes from Russo. The boy Rue, it says, at the boy Rue on X. 3 coaches most likely to not make it through the end of the season, and why? Can I start with this one?
Yeah, you can definitely start because I know where you're going to go with this
Mike
one.
McDaniel. Did you see last week, Florio? I think it was Florio. Yeah, it was Florio. Culture change again in Miami. Will it work? The answer is no, it's not going to work. That team is a declining roster, yet still, Tyreek Hill, who quit on the football team and has been on social media left and right. I want out. I went in. I want out. I went in. Getting arrested, doing all these different things. He's still there. Jalen Ramsey, who doesn't want to be there, is still currently on the roster as well. We know Tua, he just can't stay on the field. It's just like I felt like he was the right guy at the time. And there was a decent push there for the first couple of years. You're like, oh, he's on to something here. And now it feels like their talent is now on the wrong side of the hill. And he is now desperately trying to push buttons that I don't think are going to work.
Yeah, I would say McDaniel's an easy one to kind of point to just because I think it's that time in the regime. 3 names I'll give you just to change up a little bit. I think 2 in the AFC North. I love Kevin Stefanski, but I just think if this thing starts 1-8, 2-9, whatever it may be, just think people are going to start to get really loud. And again, I would like try to push through one more year and like give them this year and hopefully see some progress from Shador or Dylan Gabriel, and you see some life. And it's like, 7 wins this year, 6 wins, but like we were projected 3, and we'll give them one more year, and we're going to get the quarterback, and Deshaun's a thing of the past. I'd love to see them push through one more year, but sometimes guys' voices go a little dry, and I think you could see that could go ugly quickly. I don't know that Zach Taylor's making it through the year. I think there's a chance that they're good and they win 12 games, and it's like Burrow is awesome, and Chase goes for 2,000 yards, and actually Hendrickson and Shamar are really good, and they fix the defense enough, and like there is that world. there's also a world where like they do what they do every year and they start 4-7 and they're like, it's enough. It's a contract that's coming down to the end there. And, as much as they love, Burrow loves them, like I could just see them being like, hey, I don't know, Dan Pitcher's going to be the coach for the next 6 weeks. We're going to evaluate our young guy in house and, and we'll go from there. My two other names, I don't think these will happen, but Jonathan Gannon in Arizona, they're not, I know they don't like to spend a ton of money. So I could see them saying like, we're not going to eat years on a deal. But again, if they start 3-8 for whatever reason, like what's keeping you there? And then Brian Callahan in Tennessee. I know I mentioned a lot of names that are like, hey, a couple of those guys are fresh, pretty new, and a couple of guys have been there for a while. If Cam Ward looks like crap early on, and they're not good, it's a new ownership group. They just fired a GM they promoted the year prior. Like, I don't know. They're very unexpected, and they do a lot of different things. So, would I fire a coach that I just drafted number one quarterback overall pick with as a quarterback? No. But again, like they just fired their GM, who was the second highest person in the organization, promoting him a year prior after firing Mike Vrabel for this guy. So, like, there's just a lot there. I can see that being a place where we see new coach potentially.
Yeah, I had Brian Callahan on my list of three for much of what you talked about there. I don't think we have any idea whether he can coach or not. I think that roster was we talked about it coming into the year was a mismatched roster. Like, what timeline are you on? You've got these older veterans you're paying a lot of money to. You make the trade for Snead. You sign some big guys in free agency, but you don't have a quarterback. You don't have any receiver. It's just it was a very odd build, which I think is why Rand Carthon is no longer there. But to your point, Amy Adams Strunk chose between Vrabel and Rand Carthon. She chose Carthon. And then a year after choosing Carthon, she bounces him. So I don't have any idea what she's going to
No
do. I think she's
loyalty to
very
any of these guys.
unpredictable, right? They've got a new stadium coming. Maybe I don't know, throw it out there. Maybe they Bill Belichick. Maybe
Yeah,
they
it's
look
also a
at
new GM that
right.
didn't get hot. It's not the same timeline, which is always a bit of a wonky who wins that power struggle.
Yeah. So I just they might be looking to sell some tickets there a year from now. So maybe they look for a bigger fish as a head coach. And I'll throw one other name in there, and that's Brian Daboll. And
Yeah.
I still think he's a good coach, but maybe he's just a good offensive coordinator. Obviously, they had the terrific first year. You're hearing stories now that I think it was Tiki Barber put it out there, and I don't know how reliable Tiki is on this front, but he was like Daniel Jones. The moment Dable started to push him, he just turned insular, and that's obviously not how you can do that position and be that guy. And that Jackson Dart is not that guy. Again, we'll see if any of that's true or not, but they're on notice. I still think Mara feels like they have to get to the playoffs, which I don't think is the right sort of goal to set for this group based on where the roster is and what they're trying to do. But whatever, that's what they think, and maybe that's where we're headed. So that's the answer to that question. And the last one comes from Michael Shaw, also on X, who says, compare Belichick trading Randy Moss in 2010 to the Red Sox trading Rafael Devers. And for those of you who are under a rock or don't care about baseball, I know Rafi has been a pain in the butt. He still qualifies as my favorite Red Sox player. And he was absolutely mashing the baseball this year after a terrible start where he went 0 for 19 with 15 strikeouts. Couldn't get him to play first base, back and forth with the GM, back and forth with the owner. And then out of nowhere, apparently not even shopped, he gets traded to San Francisco. I don't know, Will, that I really see much of a comparison there, although clearly Moss had become a headache too. What I would say about where Moss was in his career versus where Devers is, Moss was on the wrong side. And I think if you look at his career after that, he never was
I have a better example.
what you would remember him
More
as.
Richard
Meanwhile,
Seymour.
Devers is 28.
Is more Richard Seymour when he went out to Oakland, where like Richard was still an all pro level player, but you could see like it might start to go. And Bill usually was a year too early. I don't know. I was trying to think of a Red Sox Patriots example. Maybe it's like, I don't know. It's just a hard comparison. I would say it's more, it feels a little bit more like when the Yankees let Cano walk. I know it's a different thing, but they let Cano walk. They were like, there was some, hey, like he was still amazing those first couple years in Seattle, but it's like, hey, do we want to be tied down to this guy who kind of plays a different brand of baseball that doesn't age always the best. And I would just say this with the Red Sox that's a bit confusing. It feels like in all three of these trades, or letting people walk, they just haven't gotten the return that I would have expected on all of them, which is what I think probably frustrates people the most. And again, you couldn't have predicted Verdugo was going to not be a good play. Like that doesn't, whatever, but you're betting on prospects. I don't know if you would have shopped Devers, like the Mets wouldn't have given you three of their top six guys and an arm, and they're also playing good baseball. I mean, they're fundamentally awful to watch. They kind of just hit, but the Yankees are bad to watch too if you don't like fun. You know what I mean? So I just don't really understand why give Devers the extension if you're just gonna. You could have waited 2 or 3 years here, or until July 31st, and been like, "Yo, Philly, like I know you're in this race, and like we're gonna take all of your guys." Or the Dodgers always have an endless amount of prospect. You know what I mean? I just don't really understand like the randomly scrambling after a June 15th sweep of the Yankees. Hey, we're going to take this guy, and we're not even going to take their top two prospects.
Yeah, as I tweeted in the moment as it was going down, I'm like, well, if they don't get Etheridge, who's their Eldridge, excuse me, who's their
There's no
number
guard.
one prospect, I'm like, what are you doing? And it became clear that this was more about dumping the salary and getting now under the
Are we seeing
CBT.
that more, Mike? Like I know it's
Yes,
maybe more recent, but it's Luca. Um, I even feel like uh, the
I just don't know how you don't
designation.
shop them, man. To your point, it's like you're telling me that the Mets, with all their money, wouldn't have just picked up the full freight and still given you multiple
You
top
probably could have
five
walked out of there
prospects.
with Mauricio, Alvarez, and two of the other guys, and been like, "Oh, here's four starters right away." And we're just going to go full youth movement. We'll trade Bregman at the deadline, and like next year we're going to have like this really fun homegrown Red Sox team, and like now they're kind of caught in between. I do think this kind of transitions us to a little bit of the winners and losers because I think in the NFL we haven't seen it as much in terms. We see salary dumps all the time, right? Got teams take on you see, oh, why did this guy only go for a fourth rounder when he's a first round? He should have gone for a
Right.
one, right? Like
Just get rid
Devontae.
of all the money.
Devontae went for a three, and Devontae was still a top 10 player at his position in the league. And it's like, he should go for 2 1s. We should get 3 1s for this guy. And it's like, there's more to it. Um, Mike, I've talked a lot about this one team. I know we're getting an ad read in here, but I want to just preview this with the Patriots week one opponent. Maybe I'm too high on, but I'll get to it after our ad here. But man, I don't know why. I just feel really good about what the Raiders have been doing.
I think we're sharing a brain on that one. They're on the outside looking into my list, but they're right there on the list. But yes, to your point, let's hear from Prize Picks. Obviously, cook up hot takes with your friends, win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. It's the best way to win real money this basketball season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds. Turn your sports takes into real money all season long on Prize Picks. All you got to do is download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Yeah,
So explore more with me. Because I've heard this a lot locally because everyone looks at the Patriots schedule and says it's easy. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people are jumping on the 10, 11, 12, 13. I'll have what you're smoking train. Um, I think the Raiders in week one, like that's a pick 'em. Like that team with Gino, with Pete Carroll, who maybe he's not a top five coach anymore, but is he still a top 10 coach? At least he's built programs before. He knows what success looks like. So yeah, you're coming in with a new system, but so are they. And there's some high end talent on that team.
yeah. I just think their floor is exceptionally high. And especially, again, I don't know how it's going to all look. I just don't think any of us really know. I will tell you, they hired a really good coach. They hired a GM who brought over a bunch of people, which, despite that, like, there's a lot going on with the Raiders. Do I love the Vegas move and we can go into all that stuff? No. And I think the Tom Brady stuff's a little weird where like he's involved and not involved, but is very loud about certain, that whole
Right.
thing I get is there's a lot to the Raiders just on the football field. Like Gino's at least the top half of the league quarterback, so your floor should be high there. Gentry's probably going to be a top 7 running back in the league the second he steps on an NFL field. Brock Bowers is arguably the best tight end in in the NFL, or pass catcher at least, in terms of just that. Michael Mayer is a very good tight end too. I don't know. Besh and Myers are they both probably twos? Yeah, but like Bowers is your one. And we saw the Chiefs have success with this type of model where your tight end's your first option as a pass catcher and a good running game and good other options. Can Jack Besh not be at least like white Rashee Rice? And to some extent where it's like this good yak player, can play in the slot, can play outside, different things like that. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be that good. I just mean like, can he not play that type of role? Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins have not really ever played together. Like we didn't see it last year that much. Yeah, they've lost some other guys, but I felt like they drafted well. I think Pete's just going to raise the floor of this team so tremendously high that how can they not be a winner? Last year, I felt like you left last year going, dude, this team stinks, and like there's no hope here. And now I sit there and go, if you told me, I don't think this happens, but if you told me if any of the teams that go worst to first, why can't the Raiders be that team? The Chiefs coast every regular season. The Chargers are going to be good, but do we know quite how good? They had a soft schedule last year. They kind of did similar things to what you would expect the Raiders potentially to do with high floor coach, guy that gets them energized, a culture building guy. And like, it just feels like, can't the Raiders be a team that goes to between 8 and 11 wins? I don't know. It could really vary. It feels like Gino means it's 8 and 9 or 9 and 8, but just my point being like, how can they not be a winner? They got so much better at all these different spots, and they got better at head coach and GM by a significant margin, which is kind of hard to do right off the bat.
I like a lot of what they've done this offseason. I like Gino more than most. I think you're kind of in that camp with me. But even if you weren't, like he loves playing for Pete. Pete loves him. Like that was a no brainer.
Pete's going to be rejuvenated too. He's not had a break, and he probably got to self scout for the first time in 15 years.
Yep.
After USC, there was no break. It was just like right
One to
into
the
it.
next. Yep. Yeah. No, I like that call a lot. I'll give you one, and this is scary for the rest of the league. That's the defending Super Bowl champs, the reigning Super Bowl champs, however you want to phrase it, the Philadelphia Eagles, who, um, if you want to look at, they did move some, they lost Milton Williams, they traded uh, Chauncey Gardner. They have on their roster, it's possible that on defense that they will start 10 guys who are still on their rookie deals, and then Zach Bond, who was incredible last year, in the middle. I don't think Bond was a one-hit wonder. I certainly don't think the pieces that we saw grow on that team, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, obviously Carter in the middle, like I don't think those guys are one-hit wonders. Like I think they're going to continue to get better. There's even some rumblings that DeJean might play full-time safety this year, which is an intriguing. I mean, he's a super talented player. I think you saw that last year. The moment he got inserted in the starting lineup is when their defense went right to the moon. So to me, like, oh, you still have Saquon, AJ, Devontae. You managed to keep Dallas Goedert. That whole line is still together with the exception of Mekhi Becton, but they've done such a good job of drafting in advance that I'm not really worried about the loss of Becton. I think they can fill that hole. And I think Hurts healthier in the playoffs. We saw he played at a better level. Now, I don't know that he's ever going to be what I thought he might have been a few years ago, which is a top 5 quarterback. It's probably not going to happen. He just doesn't seem to process the game that way. But for the way they run their offense, he's a great fit. Like, I just think that team, it went really well, man. It's just like, okay, we got everything we need. We changed a couple faces, but they should be ready to roll right from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm gonna shocker the Rams. How is it not the Rams? All they do is get better again, and I don't worry about Devontae's ego and different things in that building. Like Devontae's art is without a doubt significantly better than what Cooper Kupp was in present day. Cooper Kupp was an incredible player, and I don't know what happened last year. I don't know if it's just the injuries or like everything just kind of fell apart. It felt like the biggest win is they brought Matt Stafford back, Mike. Like there was, there was a shot it was going to be Rodgers or Jackson Dart or Jimmy G, and like, no, they got Matt Stafford back, and it might just be for a year, which means they're all in. I mean, when the Rams are all in, they did this 4 years ago. they'll go trade for Von Miller. Who knows if they don't go trade for Jalen Ramsey in the next 2 weeks? Like, and again, maybe go play Ramsey at safety, and you're like, ooh, like this is a really fun group where they do the Von Miller trade, and Stafford's in the Aaron Donald mode where it's like, I might be done after this year. I don't know, but we're gonna go all in. They bring everybody back. The defense gets better. The offense gets better. McVay's still there. They keep all the surrounding pieces. I just like, what's not to love?
Yeah.
Like they get an extra first round pick next year, which means if Stafford does retire, they have 2 ones to move up in the draft and get McVay his first homegrown quarterback. There's like so many things to like about them. It's going to come down to health, and it's going to come down to Sean McVay not turtling in the fourth quarter in typical Shanahan tree fashion, because we've seen it. We've seen him overcome it, but we've also seen, they got pretty lucky to beat the Niners that year where, if Jimmy Ward catches a lob pass from Matt Stafford over the middle, like maybe they don't win that title game. So I think they got better. I think they got better at important spots for their team. And I thought they were the second best team in the NFC last year, and I don't know why they wouldn't be the second best team or the best team in the NFC this year. Like the Eagles and Rams, to me, are on a collision course to meet in January again. And I think it's going to matter how much tougher did the Rams get on defense to stop the Philly run game, and what dynamism does Devontae add that you can't just double Puka the whole game. If Puka's healthy, Devontae's healthy in January, they have every chance to go in a Super Bowl. So to me, 2-year window. It's really a year window. Go win the title.
You have me excited there, and all the things you said. But when you mentioned the idea with the 2 first-round picks, and if Stafford leaves, going up and McVay going to get his quarterback, I know it has nothing to do with winners and losers. I love that idea, and I kind of like who of that core, because there's a bunch of good ones. At least on paper right now, we go into this thing thinking this is a better quarterback draft by a long shot than last year's was. Who does he like? Who would he target in that regard? And they're such a funny team, right? Because they looked to get up to, what was it, 7 or 8, Colston Loveland, and then they end up going backwards and getting an additional first round pick instead, which again plays well to the future. But look, their whole operation has been excellent for a number of years now. So I can totally sign off on that. I'm going to give you one. Don't call me a homer, because as you well know, I've had many critiques of what's gone on this spring, and of certainly, as I've made reference to, some of the outrageous claims being made by people that cover the team. But I think the Patriots have to be included as a winner, mainly because of Mike Vrabel and just what he brought with him. The aura, the coaching staff, they have been a laughing stock, and it's been hard for people in the region to just admit that the bottom fell out, whether it was the loyalty to Bill and like, oh, it's just a one-time thing, or then like trying to like whistle past the graveyard with some of the stuff that was going on with Mayo last spring and into the summer. No, this franchise has been one of the worst franchises in football for multiple years now, dating back to the last couple of years of Bill. And they needed a reset. They got it. I know some people didn't like them wiping out all their, the veteran leaders, the David Andrews and the Dietrich Weiss. Dude, that's gone. All that stuff is gone. This is Mike's team now. He's controlling what's happening there. And I think between that, some of the money they spent that has definitely boosted their defense. I like the way their defense looked again. They're not in pads, but this spring, I thought their defense looked like a team that could eventually be a top 10 defense again. And then, yeah, there's questions about the wide receiver room. There's questions about offensive line, in particular tackle. And yeah, there's still questions about the quarterback. We think he's a franchise quarterback. We don't know yet. You don't have enough evidence yet. We need to see more improvement. We certainly need to see him do a better job taking care of the football. This should be a better scheme for him. I know McDaniels will be in his ear constantly harping about that, when to take chances and when to just eat it. But to me, just based on where they've been and based on the last 4 or 5 months, I feel like they're a clear winner.
I agree. I think on paper, I think this is where I land with the Patriots. I just don't know because I haven't seen it. Like the reason I could, I feel the same way with the Raiders in a lot of ways. Like I said that, and I think the Raiders and Patriots are in a lot of similar things. This high floor coach, in a lot of ways, a lot of things around the front office changed. They've upgraded in a lot of different spots. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see those teams week 1, because they're 2 teams that conceivably are playoff teams. They also might win 6 games, because I just literally don't know. I'll give my two losers quickly because I don't want to be overly negative on this podcast, obviously. I think the Dolphins are one.
Yep.
And I don't say that because I cover the Jets and we talk Jets and Patriots a lot. It has nothing to do with that. I just don't know what the direction they are in as an organization. They're caught between an all-in team with a lot of big contracts and a team that hasn't drafted really well and isn't sure they have the right coach and GM. And I just don't think that got solved. If anything, I think they're still stuck in the middle. So transparently, like, sure, they might win 9 or 10 games, but it feels like the window at least semi-closed for right now. Again, maybe Tyreek bounces back and he's like, I'm healthy. He's healthy for a year and it's amazing. And Waddle gets 17 and Tua looks good. And like, they're actually competing in this division. And there's that possibility. But as
There's
you
enough,
mentioned,
yeah, to your point, there's enough high end talent on the
yeah,
roster to be capable of doing that. It's just, it's been trending in the wrong
it's trending
direction.
in the wrong direction. I just think we both are at the point where I don't know. I don't know that they're, yeah, I don't know if it's going in the right direction. I'm gonna I'm gonna say San Francisco's a loser. Um, I think the Niners have enough talent, and I think that Kyle's a good enough coach to get them back to the playoffs and be a respectable team. I also thought this was the offseason to totally, take your wounds. Last year, sputtered out. It felt like the end of an incredible 5-year run. Like I don't think we talk enough about how good they've been for the last 5 years. And instead, they kind of went to a lot of old faithfuls. It's like we're going to bring Salah back. We're going to run back with like all these former Jets coaches and Jets guys that just transparently were horrible with the Jets. And all we've talked about for 3 months already with Aaron Glenn is like how much better the culture is, and they actually run a real practice and these different things. And like the guys who spearheaded that are now the two other main assistants with the Niners. I don't like Michael as their first round pick, and I think that was a total solid pick. Actually, I'm not saying I know it was a total solid pick. They extend big money to Kittle, and on the wrong side of 30, they extend Brock Purdy to huge money where I don't know. I wondered if like we talked about it a million times. Should that have been a teams are desperate. This class sucks. Let's capitalize. We've maximized his potential. I can do this. Kyle's proven he can do that with pretty much anybody at the quarterback position. I mean, Matt Ryan's an MVP. Like Jimmy G went to a Super Bowl. Brock Purdy was in a Super Bowl. Like these guys are not. I mean, Matt Ryan's a different class, but you get my point. Trent Williams another year, but we didn't really. I don't feel like we addressed who was going to take over for him. McCaffrey's a year older, and I don't know what he's going to. Hopefully, he's amazing, Mike. They move off of Debo, so they get credit there. But you shouldn't then move off Ayuk too. Move on, like either move on totally or don't. And I just feel like they're stuck in the we're going to be okay with winning 10 games going on in the division round, and then now we're in cap hell in a year. And again, they can get out of it, but I didn't love their offseason personally.
I'll give you a loser. And you mentioned the Dolphins, and earlier you talked about Stefanski, and I kind of put Cleveland in the loser category. The Dylan Gabriel in round 3, Shedeur Sanders in round 5 made very little sense to me. I think re-upping Myles Garrett, even though he is the franchise player, I think they should have capitalized. They should have moved. Like they should have been in a burn it down stage, but because of Barry and Stefanski likely being on the hot seat, felt like they couldn't do that. But I'm going to put the Steelers in here, and it starts with, and we talked about it. Look, much like when the Jets went in on Rodgers, I understood why they did it. It made sense. It didn't work. The Steelers screwed around with Justin Fields. Fields ends up with the Jets. Mason Rudolph wasn't going to be the answer. Obviously, they traded Kenny Pickett last year. But settling on Aaron Rodgers and not having Rodgers for the length of the offseason, basically, what he does versus who they are, don't feel like it's a good mesh to me. They trade for DK Metcalf, which is something they never do. That was like a big investment, big trade, big financial commitment to that position. What's DK like to do? He likes to go down the field. What did Aaron not want to do at all last year? And you're going to tell me again at 41 that he's going to move well again? Like, I
He
don't
going
think.
under center, Mike? Is he going to run under center play action like he was 28? Because he didn't
No,
last year. He sat in the gun
right.
for 98. They're on the goal line. They were in gun.
I think he and Arthur Smith. I'm already predicting it. There's going to be there'll be a big takeout piece at some point. It might even happen during the year if it really goes south, where like the two of them are sniping at each other. Sources
You know what's
say
weird is that
Arthur Smith can't stand Aaron Rodgers.
there was a lot of talk, I'll phrase it as, that Rodgers wanted Arthur Smith to come in and Saleh wanted him to come in last year, and Smith said no, obviously. But this was before he took the Steelers OC job,
Mm-hmm.
12 months ago. And I just keep thinking to myself, like, as bad as Hackett was, he was horrible. He's the worst offensive coordinator I've ever seen in my life. But at least he ran Rodgers' system.
Right.
Arthur Smith wants to run under center, play action, two tight ends, two backs, and that's not a bad thing. It worked with Ryan Tannehill. It worked to some extent with Fields and Russ last year. Like, they're a 10-win team. Rodgers wants to be no motion. Arthur Smith likes motion. Rodgers wants to be in pistol. Arthur Smith likes under center. Arthur Smith wants to run play action from under center. Rodgers wants to run play fake and get the ball out as quickly as possible. No motion. He plays the game in an 8-yard box, and it could work at times. And when he's healthy, he'll throw it long a little bit, Mike. But I would say the one thing, and I think we talked about this. You know this, and we didn't really see it with Tom, but we saw it a little bit. That internal clock gets a little slower, and the deep ball goes. It's the first thing with Peyton. It went, and it was done. Rodgers couldn't throw a deep ball last year. You talked about it, like, and I'm not talking the 65-yard dimes he used to throw. I'm talking like 35-yard 5-step drop go balls were like 10 feet high and out of bounds, and you're like, dude, this is your guy. Like, Devontae's your guy. You've done this for. I don't know. I don't get it. I get it, but I don't like the mix of the team and quarterback doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Again, it was like they had to do it because Rodgers at his best gives you a higher, even at this age, gives you a higher ceiling than Mason Rudolph does. I just don't think, from a scheme perspective, from a personality perspective, it's going to work. I can't wait for some of the Mike Tomlin press conferences when Aaron is taking plays down to 1 second and then checking down on 3rd and 8 for a 2-yard completion.
You saw it in person this year in New England. How
Yep,
many delay games?
oh my God, it's going to be, and Tomlin just he'll eventually let you know how he feels. I'm going to give you one more winner, and I don't do this because you might be wearing a Jets hat. I don't know.
No, I
Oh,
regretful.
jeez. Supporting a loser like that, I appreciate that after getting swept by the
That's
White
another
Sox.
loser, Aaron Boone. What a loser.
Oh, jeez. I did enjoy when I got kicked out of the game the other night. I'm going to say the Jets, and it's not because necessarily of the players that they added. It's just, and we talked about this in the last pod, it's the culture that he has brought. It is the shut your damn mouth. We're just out. We're about business. We're playing football. Sauce and Garrett Wilson both show up, even without their contract extensions, and both of them talking about wanting to remain with the Jets. And Sauce saying that he feels like things are progressing at a good rate. Like, I want to be here with my guys. I love all that stuff. Now they got to get to the finish line with both of those guys, or that could turn very quickly. But to this point, what Aaron has done has made a lot of sense. I don't love Justin Fields, but can they find a little bit more out of Justin Fields than someone else has before him? And as we talked about, just give them competent quarterback play with the aggressiveness that I know he's going to bring on defense and the dogs that he has on defense. Like, I think that's going to work. So to me, it just feels like for the first time in a long time, there hasn't been all this nonsense around the Jets. It's just been about football. And that is a breath of fresh air. That is what Aaron Glenn wants to do. And look, I don't know if that means 8 wins, 9 wins, or if that means they're 5-12 but headed in the right direction. I don't know. Again, we haven't seen it enough for me to tell you one way or the other how it's going to be. But there are parts of that roster I like, and I like what Aaron's done so far. So to me, much like with the Patriots, it's just a far cry from where they've been, and now we'll see what they can do with it. But like, you came out of this going, all right, like, I think we got the right guy. I think we're headed in the right direction. Now let's see it when they get pads on.
Yeah, I have nothing to add on that. I think I'd say you described that quite well.
I listen, man. I listen and I learn. All right. For those of you listening to the show, speaking of which, we ask you to subscribe to the podcast, like and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead, hit the like button, and subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel where you can find our show, a lot of other great Patriots and league content. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. He is Will. I am Mike. That's going to do it for this edition of the All 32. We, as always, appreciate you being there. And again, throw us some questions. Don't be afraid to put them in the chat, and we will get to them at some point here during the course of the next 4 or 5 weeks. We appreciate you as always. Enjoy the week.